The Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, but not the first Rebbe of Chassidus. First Rebbe of Chassidus was the Baal Shem Tov. His successor was a Maggid of Mezritch. And the first Rebbe we actually have a drawing of is Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe had very close, deep connection with his Rebbe, the Maggid of Mezritch, and who shared with the Alter Rebbe many different Tiferes, different teachings, particularly only with the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe had a very special neshama, a special soul, that had which has a special, unique mission to do in the world. And the Alter Rebbe was to bring down and introduce Chabad, Chachma Bina Das, to bring godliness, to bring Chassidus into rational, understandable, as much as possible ways. And in this week's parsha is one of the essential teachings that the Maggid of Mezritch taught the Alter Rebbe, and gave him a special, unique task only for him. So we are going to discuss some of these special teachings that he had. How did the Alter Rebbe come to Mezritch? How did he become to be a chassid? Now, what's interesting is the Alter Rebbe, in truth, was completely in a Hasidic environment from his very youth, from when he was young. Yeah, just on Rabbi Karp on Zoom today. The Alter Rebbe's father, was named Baruch. There's a very long book, story how Baruch found Chassidus and became a Chassid. Later on, the Baruch came to the Baal Shem Tov, was a very devoted Chassid of the Baal Shem Tov. They were married for several years, did not have children. They received a bracha, a blessing from the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov told him, you're going to have a boy, a son. He is going to have a unique neshama chadasha, a new soul. He says every neshama, all the souls of all the Jewish people are gilgulim. They're souls of people who once lived. He says the Alter Rebbe, you have a son who was a neshama chadasha, a new neshama, a soul which never came down to the world, a neshama from the world of Atzilus, from the very, very lofty soul, and he will start a new path in serving Hashem, which will go all the way until Mashiach comes. And the Maggid of Mezritch further told the Alter Rebbe that he's going to have the Alter Rebbe's father, a Baruch, who was told by the Baal Shem Tov, your son is going to have a lot of opposition during his lifetime, and you should keep it a secret that you are a chassid. Never mention the Baal Shem Tov in front of him. He shouldn't even know that you are chassidim. And he has to come by himself, on his own accord, to chassidus, find a Maggid of Mezritch by himself. And this continued. The Alter Rebbe saw the Baal Shem Tov when he was 3 years old. The Baal Shem Tov cut his hair. That's the only time the Alter Rebbe was brought to the Baal Shem Tov. Alter Rebbe kept on asking, who cut my hair? And he was told that Zaidi, his grandfather. But on no account would the Baal Shem Tov allow the Alter Rebbe to even hear about him, hear about Chassidus or the Baal Shem Tov. Later, when the Alter Rebbe was a young child, he was sent to learn by a Melamed, a teacher, in the town of Lubavitch. This is long before Lubavitch was the center of Chabad Hasidus. This is still during the times of the Baal Shem Tov. The Alter Rebbe, as a child before Bar Mitzvah, learned with two great Chassidim of the Baal Shem Tov in Lubavitch. One was named Rabbi Ber. Recently, they found his matzeva, his kever, where he's buried in the town of Lubavitch. He was a Maggid of Lubavitch, together with Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Nachman, the great Chassidim in the town of Lubavitch. That's where the Alter Rebbe taught or learned. And many of the basics of Chabad were actually infused in the Alter Rebbe while he was a child learning in the town of Lubavitch. In Rebbe Yamin Shtibel, which of course is not around anymore, but was actually the same. The shul was around all the way till the times of the Rebbe Rashab, the shul where the Alter Rebbe learned as a child in the town of Lubavitch. He was never told by any of his teachers about the Baal Shem Tov, about Chassidus. He was taught to love every single Jew, regardless of who they are, taught about the neshama and a godly soul, who a Jew really is. But his teachers were tremendous scholars, tremendous Talmidei Chachamim. They were under strict instructions by the Baal Shem Tov not to reveal anything about Chassidus, anything about the Baal Shem Tov to the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe got married at the age of 14. When he was married already, he says he was considered a Rav Tano Palig. He was tremendous. So many stories of the Alter Rebbe, of his wisdom from his young child, on the levels of the Zkainim, on the levels of the Tanoim, Amirayim. He was inducted in the Chevra Kadisha before his Bar Mitzvah. There were many deep, when the Alter Rebbe was 10 years old, he already gave a lecture, a shiur, to the Torah scholars in Vitebsk, in the most complicated halachas of the Rambam, Hilchos Kiddush and Chodesh, laws of a new moon, calculations, and they were totally blown away by the greatness and brilliance of the Alter Rebbe as a young child. Alter Rebbe, as a young child, he wrote a Pirush, an explanation on Chumash, which is inclusive of explanations of Rashi, the Ramban, and I think the Ibn Ezra, three of them together. And after he wrote it, he had a dream where the three of them came to Rashi, the Ramban, and the Ibn Ezra came to him in a dream and summoned Alter Rebbe to a Bezdin. And they said that until now, all the Jewish nation has learned our Sfarim, our works. But now they're going to stop learning our works and learn your Sefer instead. And the Bezdin in Alter Rebbe's dream ruled that Alter Rebbe has to burn his Sefer, has to get rid of the book, not to publish it. And Alter Rebbe had, and afterwards, the three, Rashi, the Ramban, and Ibn Ezra blessed the Alter Rebbe during his dream. And the Alter Rebbe had this dream repetitive several times. And after he had it several times, he went and he burned the Pirush that he wrote. That no one, and which was amazing because the depth of Rashi wrote for a 5-year-old, for a child who's starting to learn Chumash. The Ramban, he wrote the Sefer in many ideas of Kabbalah inside of it. For scholars mainly, many different things are hinted. And Alter Rebbe's Pirush from a young age already included all of this. He was one of, the most sought after. Everyone wanted Alter Rebbe. Every wealthy person wanted the Alter Rebbe as son-in-law, someone who's going to be coming up, the greatest leader of the Jewish, coming up and coming. And the Alter Rebbe was married at the age of 14 to the daughter of Rabbi Yehuda Leib Segal, who was he's a very wealthy person who lived in the city of Vitebsk. Alter Rebbe grew up in the Yajna, but the Alter Rebbe later on went to Vitebsk. The Alter Rebbe's father's father, his name was Moshe, a great-grandson of the Maharal of Prague, a tremendous Torah scholar, passed away in his late 90s. Alter Rebbe spent some time with him because he had to leave Prague for whatever reasons. He was persecuted, very wealthy, and very deeply educated. He debated cardinals in the Vatican. He was by the Alter Rebbe's bar mitzvah. And so the Alter Rebbe, already at the age of 14, was a tremendous Torah scholar, a Gaon. And the Alter Rebbe he's turning 19, already married for 5 years. And the Alter Rebbe wanted to advance his Torah learning. At that point in time, there were two main centers for Torah learning. I mean, there are many of them, but the two greatest ones, where the greatest scholars were, one was in Vilna, where you had the Vilna Gaon, the Gaon of Vilna, and one was in Mezritch. You heard about Mezritch, not from anyone, his father, not from his teachers, but from other people. He heard about Mezritch, and he heard that in Vilna, they could teach you how to learn. Alter Rebbe says, Baruch Hashem, I know how to learn already a little bit. But in Mezritch, they teach you how to daven. And I didn't know how to daven. I didn't know anything about davening. So Alter Rebbe's brother, his name is Rabbi Levi, was also a tremendous Torah scholar in his own right. And later on, in Liozna, by the Alter Rebbe, he was in charge of all the Chadarim. The Alter Rebbe had shulchanis tables, who he only admitted the most greatest Torah scholars to become part of his inner circle of shulchanis, of the tables. You had to be a baki in Shas, a baki in Kabbalah, already fluent in entire Shas and Rishonim, etc. And his brother, Rabbi Levi, he was in charge, and he wrote many of the tshuvas. Many of the Alter Rebbe's halachic responses were written by Rabbi Levi, and the Alter Rebbe edited it after. And so he advised his brother, the Alter Rebbe, to go together to Mezritch. And they went together to Mezritch, and they were there. The first time the Alter Rebbe was there for, I think, 6 months. But his brother went back after 3 weeks because he didn't have permission from his wife to stay longer. Alter Rebbe stayed longer. And what happened is, even after the Alter Rebbe was in Mezritch, he was there for, I think, a week. And the Alter Rebbe decided that this is not for him. He wasn't overly impressed. The Alter Rebbe was on the way out of Mezritch. He already left the city. And then he came back because he realized he forgot a certain object in the Beis Mezritch. And he walked back. As he comes back in, he sees that a woman walked into the Beis Mezritch, which was a shul, and she had a question of kashrus on a chicken that she had. She brought it to the Rav. She brought it to the Maggid of Mezritch, the Paskin. And the Maggid of Mezritch looked at it, and as he's looking at the question, if the chicken is kosher or not, and he starts bringing all of the sources and halacha, the Rishonim, the Achronim, Poskim, and he goes in deep depth, deeper, more and more and more. And afterwards, he says, according to Kabbalah, and the Maggid of Mezritch explained the whole thing according to Kabbalah, and the Alter Rebbe is looking at this. I didn't see this the whole time I was here. And then the Alter Rebbe decided to stay. Later on, the Maggid of Mezritch told the Alter Rebbe who he is, what the purpose of his neshama is, his specialty, and everything else about him. And he said that the Baal Shem Tov told me that Reb Zalman is going to come, he's going to leave, and then he's going to come back. And then here Alter Rebbe himself describes, the first days I came to Mezritch, and I saw everyone davening with great kavana, preparing himself 3 times a day, before davening, and after davening, to apply their davening into their daily life. The preparations for saying Shema, Tikkun Chatzos, and everything took a lot of time. Alter Rebbe says, even before I came to the Maggid of Mezritch, Alter Rebbe was 18, says, I already davened from the Siddur of the Arizal. I learned with the Pirushim of the Shliach, Shaya Levi Horowitz. And my time was very limited. Alter Rebbe didn't have much time. He says, most of my time I was busy learning. Shabbos, Yom Tov, every single day, you learn and learn and learn. Halacha, Haggadah, Kabbalah, Mechkar, different types of learning. So although I was very impressed by the way the Maggid of Mezritch was davening, and all Talmidim the Maggid of Mezritch were davening, I decided to leave and to focus on what I do best, which is learning in great depth in Nigla and Nistar, and to apply myself to my learning even more. After I left, I realized I forgot something in the Beis Medrash of the Maggid of Mezritch. I went back to take it, and when the Maggid of Mezritch, there was a question of kashrus was brought in front of him, and I heard the depth that he spoke in halakha. I decided to stay a little bit longer in Mezritch. The Maggid of Mezritch said Mamarim, especially for the Alter Rebbe. And the Maggid of Mezritch, he arranged a very special chavrusa, his study partner for the Alter Rebbe, which was the Maggid of Mezritch's only son. His name was Rabbi Avraham. It's called Avram the Malach, Avram the angel. Because he said he was more of an angel than a person. That's the way he would act. One story is that one year was in a Tisha B'Av, the Rabbi Avram the Malach, during the Eicha, on the night of Tisha B'Av, when he's sitting on the floor mourning for the Beis HaMikdash, he put his head between his knees and he started crying about the loss of the Beis HaMikdash, and he stood in that and he stayed in that position throughout the entire night, the entire next day, all the way to Lunch time the next day when it's time to put on talis and tefillin. And he didn't realize anything that was happening around him. There was one time when the Alter Rebbe, so he arranged, the Maggid of Mezritch arranged that the Avram, the Malach of Avram, his son, should learn with the Alter Rebbe together. The Alter Rebbe would be teaching him Nigla, learn the revealed part of Torah, and he would teach the Alter Rebbe Nister, Chassidus, the hidden part of Torah. And the Alter Rebbe said that he loved so much learning with the Avram Malach that he would change the clock in the room. Says sometimes when they were learning, the Avram Malach would become so deep into his learning, he wouldn't realize anything around him going on. Alter Rebbe would go and change the clock in the room and would steal time from the time the Alter Rebbe is supposed to teach him Nigla, and he would get more time for Avram Malach to teach him Chassidus. And Avram Malach never noticed it. And Alter Rebbe says, "Mayim ginuvim yintaku." Stolen waters are sweet. When you get something illicitly, it's very enjoyable. One time, the Alter Rebbe is learning with Rabbi Ram HaMalach, and he sees that the Rabbi HaMalach is about to have Kloisa Nefesh, which is when the soul leaves the body. When the neshama has such a thirst for godliness that it's about to leave the body. This is similar to what it said that the Rebbeim, all of our Rebbes, experience during a Maimer. That is why during a Maimer, all the Rebbeim, all the Rebbes, held on to a physical object, usually a handkerchief, our Rebbe as well. And the Rebbe had a special way of wrapping it around his hand, but all the Rebbeim held on to a physical object. Some of them held on to another person called a shtender, I think it's the Machzedek, would lean on somebody when saying a Maimer. And he realized that the Rabbi Avraham Malach, when he's speaking about certain lofty concepts, and his neshama is about to leave his body. The Alter Rebbe ran, got a bagel, piece of bread, stuffed it into Rabbi Avraham Malach's mouth to ground him, and he opened his eyes sound like what's his physical object that he has in front of him. At certain times, the Maggid of Mezritch himself would join the Alter Rebbe and Rabbi Avraham HaMalach. Now, the Baal Shem Tov had what's called Chavraya Kadisha, the Holy Society, 60 great students. Great people who were rabbis of cities, tremendous Zkainim, people who were rebbes in their own rights, including the Maggid of Mezritch. The Maggid of Mezritch had 120 students. The youngest being of all of them, of course, many Chassidim, but of people what you call the Chavraya Kadisha, the Holy Society, the Holy Brotherhood. And the Alter Rebbe was the youngest of all of the students of the Maggid of Mezritch. But the Maggid of Mezritch gave more to the Alter Rebbe than he gave to all the other students of his other Chavraya Kadisha. Even Rabbi Tzvi, Rabbi Zushan Nepali, Rabbi Melech of Lizhensk, whose yard site is coming up in Mirz Hashem on Sunday, Rabbi Chaf Aleph Adar, Melech of Lizhensk, the Baal Hafla, Rabbi Shmelk of Nikolsburg, and you can go on and on. Shlomo Karlin, Rabbi Aaron Karlin, the great students of the Maggid of Mezritch, and the Maggid of Mezritch shows the Alter Rebbe specifically, and spent much extra time individually with the Alter Rebbe. The Tzemach Tzedek, the Alter Rebbe's grandson, told his youngest son, who became Rebbe, the Rebbe Marash, that my grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, for 40 years was a Mekabel Pnimi V'Yatzmi, someone who accepted in the most inner and essential way everything in the revealed part of Torah and the hidden part of Torah, and he internalized it till it became literally one with who he was. Then, only afterwards, did the Alter Rebbe begin to reveal and start saying the Mamarim, which would, over the course of 10 years, which would make up the Sefer of Tanya, and he would say the Mamarim on Shabbos and Yom Tov. We just mentioned Rabbi Melech of Lizhensk. You know who comes on? Dovi.
Dovi.
Yeah, I mentioned Rabbi Melech of Lizhensk, and then comes Dovi. This is yard side is Chaf Aleph Adar. For 10 years, the Alter Rebbe said Mamarim on Shabbos or Yom Tov, which are very short, and these make up the idea of the main Mamara of the main 53, the idea of the 53 chapters of Tanya. When Alter Rebbe first started traveling to the Maggid of Mezritch in the year 1765, so the Alter Rebbe came, but the Maggid of Mezritch, you could say slowly in stages, brought the Alter Rebbe closer more and more. The other students of the Maggid of Mezritch were other Talmidim, Rabbi Shmelke, all of them, each of them was given a sign by the Maggid of Mezritch, a certain area where to spread Chassidus. And they would become Rebbes in their own areas. Certain cities, certain regions, Germany, Lithuania, Poland, Galicia. Each one was assigned by the Maggid of Mezritch a certain place. However, the Alter Rebbe, he did not assign a place. And Alter Rebbe stayed by the Maggid of Mezritch for a long time, first for 6 months, and he left and came back for about another year and a half. And at the end of 2 years, Alter Rebbe asked the Maggid of Mezritch, what is my avodah? What is my work supposed to be? And the Maggid of Mezritch told him, you have to forge a new path. And so Alter Rebbe started gathering groups of young, tremendous, great Torah scholars and teaching them. And he taught them literally Gemara with a few of the teachings that you heard of the Maggid of Mezritch. The Alter Rebbe came back again to the Maggid of Mezritch, and the Maggid of Mezritch told him that you already started building, you already have stones and the beams to build your edifice. However, you don't yet have the mortar that what connects the bricks together, meaning that you're already starting to develop, I see, and you're already teaching young, you're teaching the outstanding Torah scholars, but you have yet to make the connection, bring Chassidus into them. And he says for such a thing, you need power, you need strength, not from a Rebbe. And I, said the Maggid of Mezritch, was given a special strength by my teacher, the Baal Shem Tov, and I am giving over that strength to you, that you could infuse into the people that you were teaching with, to those you were teaching. Infuse the strength and the excitement of the Torah and Chassidus. The next day, the Maggid of Mezritch told him, and he told him, laying out what his life, Alter Rebbe's life, is going to look like in the future. And he says, you need special strength more than all the other Talmidim. And you need a double blessing, because you will have much more than any of the other Talmidim, many opponents who will try to stop and to break everything that you're trying to teach. And the Maggid of Mezritch told him that I'm going to give you a bracha, an extra bracha, and the bracha Birchas Kohanim, the ones we're learning about yesterday in Gemara, that we don't translate. I'm going to give him the bracha of Birchas Kohanim, blessing the Kohanim, and he had many deep kavanas. We learned maybe some of them in Derech Mitzvah, where we learned the mitzvah of Birchas Kohanim. And then after he blessed Alter Rebbe, the Maggid of Mezritch told him, remember, Alter Rebbe is all of 21 years old, 20 at this, between 20 and 21. And he says, you will have many opponents throughout your life. However, I am going to give you the spiritual belt of Eliyahu. Says Eliyahu the prophet, Ezer Masnav, he girded his loins, and he put it on his belt. Whenever he had to run away from Achav, the king who wanted to kill him, and then afterwards, when he confronted the prophets of the false prophets of the idols of Achav, and so he says, I'm giving you the spiritual belt of Eliyahu, which gave him strength, girding his loins, that you will be able to withstand all of the heavy opponents that are going to put on against you. The Tzemach Tzedek said that with this, the Maggid of Mezritch gave the Alter Rebbe a wide road how to go.
You lost you, Rabbi. Can you hear? Rabbi Itkin?
Rabbi, can you hear us?
No, got lost there.
I'm sorry. I don't know why.
Okay. There you go.
There we go. Okay. I'm sorry. So the Alter Rebbe in the year 1770 started to, so 1770, the Alter Rebbe is 25 years old. It's his fourth year of teaching of a select group of young men in the city of Vitebsk, and the Alter Rebbe at that point was beginning to, you say, diverge from the rest of the students of the Maggid of Mezritch, and to go more on his own path, a unique path, which would eventually be developed into Chabad. In the month of Iyar, in the year 1770, the Alter Rebbe went to Mezritch again, and he stayed by the Maggid of Mezritch until after Sukkot that year, which we Tafkuf Lamed Aleph. So he stayed by the Maggid of Mezritch for about 5 months at that point. The Maggid of Mezritch was very pleased with the Alter Rebbe and the way he was developing and teaching, and there are many different Tiferes teachings that the Maggid of Mezritch said to all the students, but he would call in the Alter Rebbe by himself, and individually, one-on-one, with his special teachings and Tiferes, and he would teach for the Alter Rebbe himself. So one of those Tiferes, one of the teachings that the Alter Rebbe was taught, and it was told in Yechidus by the Maggid of Mezritch, was Hayom Yom, actually from yesterday. So I'm going to bring up the Hayom Yom from yesterday, but we're going to bring that with the background, so it gives a little more a flavor, you could say, to yesterday's Hayom Yom. So the Torah reading of this week's Parsha is Parshas Tzav. Tzav 96. Famously, there's 96 psukim, 96 verses in this week's Parsha, which is gematria of the name Tzav. Those who drink Zkainim, make sure to do it this week because it's 96. The beginning, the first six psukim, first 6 verses, is called Parshas Hadeshen, the mitzvah of in the Beis HaMikdash to remove every single morning a shovel full of ashes from the top of the altar, top of the Mizbeach, and bring it to outside. A special Kohen will be chosen to do it. The Kohen who would do it usually become very wealthy, and there would be a lottery which Kohen could do it. No one ever did it twice. And this is we say this every single day in Karbanos. Before davening, we say this every single day. Hashem spoke to Moshe, tell the Jewish people, here is a karban of the Mizbeach, and the Kohen shall don his tunic, and to go remove from the Mizbeach. Fashat Tzbegadav, he should take off his garments, put on new garments, and you put on the big dekahuna, and he should take out the ashes from the Mizbeach to outside of the camp. And then there's a new mitzvah. You should always have the Eish al Mizbeach tukabai. You should have a fire on the Mizbeach. Lo sichbe should not go out. Let me just do this Mizbeach. I'll bring it up on the screen while we talk. So the Maggid of Mezritch Temple Institute, the Mizbeach, we went through this picture previously. This is what the Mizbeach, the altar, looked like. Here's where it was. It had about a 50-foot ramp, and there was a lot, much, you see piles of ashes on the Mizbeach from all the Karbanos. And there was a mitzvah every morning to remove all of the ashes from the Mizbeach. And the Kohen, it was a drawing of the Kohen removing the ashes. That is the mitzvah of the removal of the ashes. Terumas Hadeshen. Removing the ashes from the Mizbeach, to find it. But that's the idea. And the other mitzvah says you should always have a constant fire on the Mizbeach. Lo sichbe should never be put out. There were 4 bonfires on the Mizbeach, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. But one of the bonfires that are on top of the Mizbeach was only there to fulfill the mitzvah in this week's Torah portion, Eish Tamid Tukal al Mizbeach lo sichba. To never, it should be continuous fire on the Mizbeach, and it shall not go out. In the first Beis HaMikdash, there was miraculous fire that came from heaven, and the fire never went out, but they would still add every single day at least 2 pieces of wood to the fire, that the fire to do the mitzvah of adding wood to the fire. So the Maggid of Mezritch calls in the Alter Rebbe, and he tells him and explains to him on this pasuk, on this verse. This is yesterday's Hayom Yom. One of the Tiferes which the Alter Rebbe was told by the Maggid of Mezritch in Yechidus in a private audience. And he explained the whole idea of the Mizbeach and what it means in spiritual terms, in a person's own service of Hashem. So although fire in the Beis HaMikdash came down from heaven, it was still a mitzvah to add wood to the fire. A fire coming from heaven is a sasarusa de la'ela, an awakening from above. A fire that we add wood to our fire is an awakening from below. Our heart is called the Mizbeach, an altar. Just like an altar, the Mizbeach in the Beis HaMikdash, where animals were burned, so too, our heart is where we burn our animal. Which animal? The Nefesh HaBahamis, the animal soul. And there are two ways that we could have our animal soul to become awakened, excited with a fire. Fire is warmth, a beating heart, excited about Hashem. One way is a fire from below, and one way is a fire from above. Greater is when one is inspired by something outside of them. But even if you're inspired by something outside of you, there's still a mitzvah, just like in the Beis HaMikdash, although there's a fire from heaven to put wood into the fire, there's still a mitzvah to make this Erdus Lamata, to make yourself excited about Hashem, about godliness. Because Ruach, I see Ruach, Umamshich Ruach. A man's action is mirrored from above. So if I do something small, it elicits a big response from Hashem. I do one mitzvah, it elicits tremendous blessings from Hashem. I show Hashem a little bit of interest. I want to return to you. Hashem makes it so much easier for us, and he brings a lot. And it causes, in turn, if a person and elicits a spirit from above, higher and higher, it's not only commensurate, meaning I'm a little bit awakened, aroused to come closer to Hashem. And Hashem answers, but in a totally unparalleled response, Hashem's response is much, much greater, much more than a person's initiative. Hashem will help them out. From higher and higher. It's a mitzvah to constantly burn fire on the Mizbeach. What is a Mizbeach? Right in the beginning of, let's go to the beginning of a Torah reading, Parshas Vayikra. This is one of the most famous of the Alter Rebbe's Mamarim, Adam ki Yaakov mikem. When a person would bring an animal to the Mizbeach, and Alter Rebbe asks, why does it say Adam ki Yaakov mikem karban? If a person will bring from among you a sacrifice, it should say Adam mikem ki Yaakov, a person from you who brings a sacrifice, not a person who brings a sacrifice from you. The Alter Rebbe explains mikem, from you, from your in heart. When you're bringing a karban in the Beis HaMikdash, it's not merely bringing an animal to the Mizbeach, because Hashem does not need animals for any way that we can understand it. It's because Hashem said so. What the real thing is that a person brings themselves, their own heart to Hashem. You have to bring, so not instead of Adam ki Yaakov mikem, but Adam mikem ki Yaakov, a person who brings themselves to Hashem. When you bring yourself closer to Hashem, you also have to light your own fire. When you light your own fire, you make yourself, and you inspire yourself, and you push yourself to go beyond and work on yourself. So then, he says, just like in our parsha, it says, Eish tamid tukar al mizbeach lo yisichpeh. It should always be a constant fire on the mizbeach. And he says, Loi sichbeh, should have a constant fire burning. When a person makes their fire burn, when a person makes their Yiddishkeit, alive and excited and warm, then Loi Sichbe. Loi Sichbe means do not go, let it go out, meaning do not let the fire on the Mizbeach ever go out. The Maggid of Mezritch told the Alter Rebbe and he explained it to mean like this: Loi Sichbe. This bringing oneself closer extinguishes the light. Loy means no. Loy can also mean the negative. When one kindles their fire in their neshama, in their soul, it will extinguish any negatives. And the Maggid of Mezritch told this Torah to the Alter Rebbe, but not just once, not just twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, you know how many times he said it? 10 times. The Maggid of Mezritch repeated this Torah to the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe said it was to engrave in all of his 10 powers, 10 klikas nefesh. And then the Alter Rebbe told over what the Maggid of Mezritch told him. And he said, the Maggid of Mezritch told the Alter Rebbe, you are going to have a lot of loy, a lot of opposition. And in order to make from the loy to a kain, from the no to a yes, you are going to have to constantly have the eish tamid, that constant inspiration, that constant fire. And Hashem, then he gave him a bracha that Hashem should help you, that you should extinguish the loy, the not good, and transform the negativity and opposition into a kain, into positivity, which is what eventually happened during the times of the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe was, of course, had much opposition, and all that was done from many opponents of Chassidus, from Maskilim, their vision, and it culminated in the Alter Rebbe's arrest twice on very severe charges. So the Alter Rebbe eventually was freed in a miraculous manner, and the Alter Rebbe from then on spread Chassidus in a much greater fashion. And eventually, even those who opposed Chassidim, with the generations, not even too much later, Alter Rebbe's grandson, Tzemach Tzedek, and Bishop Volozhiner, who was started the Brisk School of Thought, first Soloveitchik, a student of the Gra, and his father was a student of the Gra, and they're the ones who worked with the Tzemach Tzedek hand in hand to protect Chadarim, Yiddishkeit in Russia. And already then, the opposition during the times of Tzemach Tzedek was already not the same, or almost non-existent, in the same manner of the Alter Rebbe's times. In the Alter Rebbe's times and times of the Maggid, the opposition of Chassidim were saying how Chassidus is taking people away from Yiddishkeit, away from Judaism. I had at one time that when met somebody says, I'm Lubavitch, I'm Chabad. Say, Chabad, isn't that the religion closest to Judaism? With someone who's not Jewish. However, so those during the opponents of Chassidus during the times of the Alter Rebbe were saying that Chassidus brings you away from Yiddishkeit and everything, whether the Alter Rebbe's Nusachat Tefillah and everything else the Alter Rebbe did, and they were fighting against it very strongly. And later on, the Alter Rebbe's things which he instituted are accepted by all Jews till today. For example, the idea of Zkainim and Latashim, the Alter Rebbe made to make knives of shchita that should be made out of steel. Now most people use stainless steel or different types of steel till today because they hold the knife and they hold the edge a lot better. The Alter Rebbe introduced it, and everyone who does it today, not sure how many of them know that it comes from the Alter Rebbe. When the Alter Rebbe came out with it, there was tremendous opposition because until then, most knives were made out of iron and many other things Alter Rebbe introduced, which are normal today. Melech Masadeh, the idea of an neshama, etc. So many other things which are taken as a given, and any opposition to Chassidus today stems not from saying that they're not Chassidus is nothing to do with Yiddishkeit or is a deviating from the Torah. But on the contrary, you're being too frum, more than the Torah tells you to do. You have to have such large tefillin, you have to have this and that. When the Alter Rebbe told over this anecdote, the story to the Tzemach Tzedek, who in turn told it to his son, the Rebbe Marash, he ended off saying like this. He says, and it's actually the Hayom Yom of the next day. Let's go to the next day after that. Right. So this is going to be this Shabbos, and Sunday, Chaf Aleph Adar, Reb Melech Siyatzeit, Reb Melech Elizen Siyatzeit. And he says, the Rebbe Marash was told by the Tzemach Tzedek, and he says, my grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, he was the Moshe Rabbeinu of Chassidus. This is Moshe Rabbeinu of Chassidus Chabad. Moshe received the Torah from Hashem. Hashem gave it to him. And it says that he was generous and he shared it with the Jewish people. Which is why when Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchos, broke the tablets when the Jews served the golden calf, and Moshe told Hashem, the Jews never transgressed the Torah because he gave it to me. And I'm not giving it to them. I broke it. It's mine. He did it to defend the Jewish people. So Moshe Rabbeinu was generous and gave the Torah to the rest of the Jewish nation. And he says, the Alter Rebbe was the same thing. What he received from the Maggid of Mezritch, he could have kept to himself. Alter Rebbe was generous and kind, and he shared Chassidus Chabad, which he received from the Maggid of Mezritch, and he gave it to all of us. Whoever learns Chassidus and works and toils to learn Chassidus, and the Alter Rebbe gives what he received from the Maggid of Mezritch, which is this godly fire, the Eish Tamik, the godly fire, which is inside of every single one of us. And this godly fire, which is so powerful that even the opponents of Chassidus, even our opponents of Yiddishkeit, will go from a loy to a hein, to going from a negative to a positive. And anyone who learns Chassidus is given over this godly fire, which Alter Rebbe received from the Maggid of Mezritch, and it will never be extinguished, not now and not forever. With this, I wish all of you and me as well should have a we should always be excited, inspired. So with that, I wish everyone a good Shabbos.